MT03. It's part of the MT range that Yamaha refers to as Hyper Nakeds, which also comprises of the MT125, MT07, MT09 and MT10. In Europe, Yamaha have shifted over 241,000 MT bikes in the last 6 years. The larger capacity models are especially popular, but the MT125 and MT03, which are 125cc and 321 respectively, are bikes that Yamaha hopes will bring younger riders on restricted licenses into the range. The last iteration was launched in 2016 and is essentially a naked version of the R3 that was launched a year prior. A 780mm seat height and 168kg weight make it pretty accessible for novices and smaller riders alike. The parallel twin motor puts out 41 horsepower at 11,000 RPM and about 30 Nm of peak torque at 9,000, so it's a fairly revvy bike if you want to get the most out of it. For comparison, one of its main competitors, the KTM 390 Duke, uses a 373cc single, which gives it the edge in both power and torque, with 43 horsepower at 9,000 RPM and 37 Nm of peak torque produced a bit lower down at 7,000 RPM. But Yamaha doesn't really play the power angle with this motor, which has been carried over to 2020 with no updates of note. Instead, they reference its sophisticated nature in the press release, citing a balanced two-cylinder configuration that delivers a much smoother feeling at lower RPM compared to some single-cylinder models. They also claim that their lightweight forged pistons are responsible for reduced vibrations as well as better throttle response. There are rumours that KTM has a 490 parallel twin in the works, which could be deployed across its Duke, Adventure and RC models, but for now it seems like Yamaha have a good angle to promote the bike on, especially when you consider that other competitors like Honda's CB300R and BMW's G310R are singles too, and therefore carry that reputation for being a bit lumpy. So the motors remain the same, then what's new? The most immediately noticeable update is to the styling, and we have to talk about those headlights first, which are definitely at the sharp end of modern motorcycle design. What appear to be daytime running lights give the MT03 some fierce looking eyes, as seems to be the fashion at the moment. I'm not sure where it started, but see the MT09, Ducati Panigale V4 or Triumph's upcoming 2020 Street Triple for a few examples. But what really makes this front end unusual is the location and size of the main headlight, with a small LED unit tucked away in the middle there. It'd barely be visible when not lit up. In fact, the horn looks to be bigger and therefore more prominent. Straight away my mind jumps to the R1, which must have had an influence. Its headlights use similar looking LEDs, albeit a pair of them with one either side. This leaves a pretty clean surface on the front of the fairing, which makes it look more like a track machine than a road bike. Personally, I quite like the traditional roundness of a headlight, even if it's using a modern LED. The CB300R mentioned earlier and other bikes in its family are a good example of that, but given that this bike is aimed at a younger market, it probably isn't necessary to reference designs from the past, and I'm sure that Yamaha know better than me about how to design a bike that sells. Like I said earlier, they've shifted plenty of MTs. LEDs are also used for the indicators, which are located high up close to the bars. Combined with the clear lenses, they're actually quite inconspicuous and almost blend into the background, which to me is usually a good thing when it comes to indicators. Yamaha have also redesigned the tank somewhat, bringing it in line with the larger capacity models in the range. They call this look mass forward, which I translate to being bulky at the front. This is a popular aggressive look for naked motorcycles at the moment. The tank has wider shoulders, narrowing towards the base, as well as deeper air scoops to echo the butchness of the MT07, MT09 and MT10. When you flick between the old and new, you can see that the new MT03 looks much more like a big bike with a more substantial presence. Yamaha also claim that the narrowness of the tank at the bottom aids ergonomics, allowing the rider to grip the tank better with their legs. It's not just an aesthetic update though, Yamaha have beefed up the forks as well. For the first time, the MT03 gets upside down forks, which should provide better rigidity as well as less unsprung weight for better responsiveness. Yamaha believe that they'll help to make the MT03 one of the best handling bikes in the A2 market at the moment, although the KTM has had upside down WP forks for a good while now, and with more girth at 43mm to the MT's 37. But ultimately, the new setup is an improvement on on the outgoing MT-03's traditional forks. They also contribute a little to the looks, giving more width at the top, just like the tank. The press release also states that they feature gold-coloured outer tubes, which is a popular look for upside-down forks. But in the accompanying photos, they're black, so who knows which will actually make it into production. Yamaha have also revised the rear shock's preload and damping settings, whilst also using a stiffer spring, which they claim will help to improve handling. The last major change for this bike is the display. The previous MT-03 had a part analog, part digital dash, whereas the 2020 model will be entirely LCD. Specifically, it'll use a negative LCD screen, which has white characters on a black background, although again, the press photos don't match. I've currently got a Honda CB650R on test, and this uses a negative LCD too. Whilst researching for my review, I've read plenty of complaints about its visibility in bright sunlight. Personally, I haven't had too many problems with it, but I'll be interested to see how the Yamaha screen lands with reviewers and whether they manage to find a bit more contrast for bright conditions. The MT-03 will be available in a white and red colour scheme, fully blacked out, and a blue option too. It'll be available from December 2019 and the pricing is yet to be confirmed, but expect something in the ballpark of the $4,500 of the last model. I'd love to know what you think of it in the comments below. Do you reckon the updated looks, suspension and display are enough to beat the KTM, Honda and BMW, or would you prefer a single cylinder motor in a bike of this size? And what do you make of that front end? It's certainly distinctive and it looks a bit like a mean face. I'd love to know who likes that hyper-modern style, or is it a bit ahead of its time? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as always, if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.